Well, it's so exciting. We have Shelley Mannell here today from Ontario, Canada. Shelley is a pediatric physical therapist from whom I have learned so much about children's anatomy and how to help them develop properly. So as part of our course, Shelley has generously offered to spend some time with us to talk about pediatric physical therapy. Shelley, welcome so much. I'm so grateful that you're here.
Thank you so much, Lynn. It's great to see you, and it's wonderful to be here. I am honored. I think, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I was hoping that you could tell us what you think teachers and clinicians really need to know about children's physical health and their movement.
Wow, that's a great question. And I think what I'd like to do in this moment is start with a little bit of a historical perspective. A lot of our clinicians and teachers and parents now don't remember a time when things were different. But in the mid to late 1990s, we had something called the Back to Sleep campaign. So we learned that it was better to put children to sleep on their backs. Before that, we always put them to sleep on their bellies.
Mm.
Um, and so what we didn't understand would be the fallout of that. And so when you put a baby on their belly, what they do periodically is they lift their head and they turn it to change their position. And every time they lift their head, they give input to the inner ear, the vestibular system. And the vestibular system drives muscle tone and it drives movement and it drives arousal of the central nervous system. And that arousal drives attention. But in the mid to 1990s, we started putting children to sleep on their backs, and they don't get as much vestibular information. So we went from children who got like 23 hours a day of an opportunity to drive that input into the system to 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day. So that children now have different sensory input and they need more movement, and they need more movement more consistently and more often, and they need it to drive their muscle tone, and that drives sort of their posture and their alignment, and that will drives their arousal and their attention.
So, what exactly is the relationship between the vestibular system and attention? This is kind of new to me.
Well, again, that vestibular system, it's kind of the vestibular system is kind of like the prom king of the brain. It knows everybody and everybody knows it, right? So it has connections all throughout the brain to every single part. From my perspective as a physical therapist, one of the most important things to remember is that it drives the anti-gravity extension, our ability to be upright in space. And as we're upright in space, we get more blood flow to the brain, and more blood flow to the brain again creates more of that generalized arousal or activity of the brain. And that, as I understand it, this is where I take my lead from you guys, is that forms the basement. That arousal level forms the basement on which we can build those attention skills.
It really tells us that the children shouldn't be sitting as much as they are,
Yes.
right? So, what are
And
your
that,
thoughts on that? Yeah, what are your thoughts?
yeah, and that's true of all of our children. So, what I want to be clear about is that's true for neurotypical children. It's just as true for them as it is true for our children who are neurodiverse. So all children in front of you can benefit from more movement. Our children who are neurodiverse, there is an additional level to that because of that. Muscle tone is a funny thing. It's really diffuse in the brain. It's not just sort of one spot. it takes a lot of pieces together to drive that. And so when our children experience neurodiversity, some of that fallout is that they have a little bit less of a muscle tone base. They tend to be just a little bit lower tone. We call it functional low muscle tone. So it's not that they can't stay up against gravity, but it is a little bit more challenging.
Right.
So they need more sensory input and more movement in order to stay upright and drive that arousal. But again, because of that change in our baby rearing practices, neurotypical children need that too.
So what are some things, first, you taught me so much about the strength of the different parts of the body. So I want to hear about the strength. And then I would love to hear like what we can do in the classrooms and in the clinic, just simple little things
Sure.
that can help.
Well, again, one of those pieces is when we build what we call that core stability, right? People think of it as just one muscle or one piece. It's all about how strong it can be, but it's actually about how all of those muscles work together as a team and how the brain drives the integration and the connection between those muscles. And again, when babies spend lots of time, it's why we push tummy time when they're babies, right? They spend so much time getting that sensory input, but then also doing all that weight bearing through their arms and their shoulders and their trunk. And that builds all those little muscles in and around the shoulder and builds all of the connection and the strength of the upper body, which is where we carry a lot of our body weight. So when we get up against gravity, we really want to have some good connection of those muscles and good strength and endurance, because we need to stay up against gravity. And then on top of that, we need to use all those muscles for upper extremity and hand skills. So all your writing, all your fine motor skills, all of those are driven by stability in through here. And so all of that is sort of tied together before a child, should be tied together before a child reaches school. That's what all of that tummy time and crawling and climbing and movement and lots of variety of movement is all about. It's all about preparing the body through play to be ready for more challenging motor experiences.
I have so many questions. My head is just popping with questions. Okay, so I want to talk about before school, but before when they're younger than 5. But I'm just thinking that I go into a lot of classrooms right now. I'm totally honored. I'm visiting a lot, maybe 50 a year, and I'm thinking that I'm going to a classroom. I'm going to probably about 7 classrooms next week, and I kind of want to do some Superman activities. Like Cognamoves, our program is upright. You've seen it. But I kind of want to start the day with some Supermans and some rhythmic arm lifting, and then, roll the body over, move to a seated position, knees up, lift those knees. What are your thoughts about that? That's what I'm thinking as I'm listening to you.
I love that. I use Cognamoves in the clinic. One of the things that I usually try and do when I'm doing activities like that is think about how can I involve the arms and the legs.
Okay.
So oftentimes when I think about that, I think about having the kids put their arms and press their arms together. Look at what your shoulder girdle does, right? Pressing your arms. So rather than having sort of arms out here, where sometimes students then not sure where they are in space and they rear up, I say, let's press our arms together. And that little bit of resistance, again, you can see, and then kids will say, oh, I can do it. I can participate. Kind of like, oh, let's just relax. Can we push our arms together gently, but can we hold that? And then can we lift our knees or turn our bodies and keep those arms and legs connected together?
Wow. Okay. Do you think that, like based on your experience, do you think that we should kind of be doing tummy time in preschool because so many kids have missed this?
It is true. I think that there are lots of activities that can qualify as tummy time or promote those. Again, part of the wonder of tummy time is that you need both the muscles on the front and the back of the body. So I think about the things that have disappeared from playgrounds, right? Like our swings. Swings have disappeared, but think about all the work that you did with your arms and your legs together to pump that swing, right? The things that have the whirligigs that we used to put and speed up. So again, the pushing and the speeding up, and then you hopped on and you got all of that input to your vestibular system. So those things have disappeared. We used to climb trees,
right,
and climb fences when nobody was looking.
Right. And go up the slide the wrong way. That's one of my favorites.
And go up the slide the wrong way, which is a great one. So all of those sorts of things, because they've disappeared, those were all the sort of senior students of that junior tummy time, right? So all those opportunities, even if it's just like playing tug of war and getting all of those activities in. I often talk about, parachutes are a favorite game, and every primary classroom owns a parachute. I talk about replacing the parachute with a big piece of lycra, because the lycra is stretchy and you can pull it. And all of a sudden it becomes, again, one of those activities where you need lots of muscles on the front and the back of the body. And then adding that in, and then having all of the kids, as you do in the classrooms, having them count and sing and use their voice and their breath, because that breathing diaphragm is really the gateway to core stability.
In our Cogni Suite and our Cogni Moves, we encourage the kids always to count out loud, which because I've worked with you now for about 10 years. Why is it so important to say what you're doing out loud and to breathe?
Well, again, from a core stability standpoint, one of the things that is open to us from the minute we're born is when I'm trying to stabilize my body as a newborn baby, the one piece that's available to me if I'm having trouble in that moment is I can hold my breath. Think about a baby. Really, that's, there aren't too many other things that they can do voluntarily in terms of body control, but they can hold their breath from the moment they're born. So a lot of the children who struggle when they are born with coping with gravity, or later on as they are developing, they hold their breath in order to stabilize their body, which is a great strategy in the moment. But it interferes with our ability to progress and create a well-wired inner core team that then serves as the anchor for all of the rest of the muscles. So when we have kids talk or sing or count, we know that they're not holding their breath, that they're creating an opportunity for all of those other muscles to be wired.
See, that is so fascinating, because in our language program, you have to touch and say, you've got to, articulate, right? All that oral motor awareness. And it occurs to me that some of my children, when I'm doing math, as an example, I can see them stop breathing sometimes. And now I realize, I'm thinking, okay, because I don't know if I'm correct, that it's a little bit of a stress response. I'm going to go back to what I could do when I was an infant. And so we have to really encourage the breathing and the saying out loud in order to move around what the brain can do defensively.
Yes.
Wow.
And again, a lot of our children who use breath holding as a way to stabilize their body have that fallout in their ability to be more adept at emotional regulation. When we hold our breath, our sympathetic nervous system rises, right? Our stress response rises.
Wow.
And so we see that fallout. And sometimes it's the other way. Children who are having regulation challenges then are holding their breath, and that has a fallout in what they can do from a movement perspective. So all of those pieces, as you have taught me even more, are all connected.
Okay, so this is all, it's always so enlightening talking to you because I really didn't know like 3 or 4 of the things we talked about here. So let's give the teachers some quick, fast tips.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm thinking we do have to do the whole posture thing. I mean, we got to make sure our kids have proper posture in their chairs and standing up. But what would you teach the teachers to just kind of keep front of mind?
You know what? Front of mind, and I know it seems hard, but how much can you integrate movement? So again, it doesn't matter what movement it is, even if it's just everybody, we're going to change our seats. We're gonna, work in a different group right now, or we're gonna move over here, or we're gonna go outside and do something here. So how you structure your day, how many opportunities, it doesn't have to be a formal movement break. Everybody's going to get up and, touch their toes, but how many opportunities can I create for my students to just move during the day, right? And as they move, as they're doing pieces, can I hear your voice, right? What will we do? You always pair those things together. So what activities can we use? What can we do so that we can hear people's voices, having them breathe, having them count, having them have all the lovely, I know they go away when they get older, but all the lovely songs that the primary teachers use to, facilitate those transitions. Those all serve so many different purposes. So those would be the pieces, sound and movement.
Sound and movement. So 2 things I want to make sure that I put into this course because of you, because some of this stuff I developed a long time ago is one, our posture song, right? Head, shoulders, hips and knees, head, shoulders, hips and knees, chin up tall, belly in and tailbone down, head, shoulders, hips and knees. So that like works. And also I've learned through Pilates about the importance of the feet, your feet placement, which I really didn't know. So that song lets us, for everyone who's watching, that song lets us really work on the posture. And then you had another piece. I'm thinking I have another activity that would go along with this and now I'm forgetting. We had the posture. Oh, I know. So in those transitions, adding quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes. So letting the children, like in my office, just like this week, I was like, we're going to walk like tigers, roar, and we'll sit quietly like snails. So the children are saying this as we're walking down the hallway. Is this aligned with what you're talking about, Shelley?
Absolutely. And look at all the things that you built into that, right? So now there's all the sound and all the movement, but again, looking at, and teachers know when your children are, we're losing control and they're rising up, look, you can organize them and gather them together. Or when we're losing everybody down here, you can use that to raise that level. Using those different pieces of rhythm to help and support all of that regulation is beautiful. The one last thing I would like to say to teachers and parents and everyone is that when we talk about posture, though, it's we have sort of grown our understanding of the fact that posture is more of a range. Right. So there isn't a perfect posture piece. And this is a part of what I love about Pilates too, is that it's a range and it's a relaxed place to be rather than, what my mother taught me, which, rigid, here we go, good posture. It's much more of a range and a much more relaxed place where I can sort of find that balance and find my breath.
And your collection, so balance, breath, and I'm going to add collection because like even when we do the posture song, I didn't learn till I did Pilates about the girdle. I was pulling my lower belly up perfectly fine my whole life teaching, but then you got to close the girdle on the rib cage. And now you're in like a slight modified C, and everyone's C is going to be different, right?
Different.
Yeah.
Right.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love how you differentiate for different children and, based on their needs. And I love that you taught me, and I shared this on Twitter about the low tone child and how sometimes they are negative. I shared that image because, people who have low tone don't intend to be low tone, so that was really the labels we put on these beautiful children when so much of what goes on for them is neurobiological is astounding. And we need people like you to educate us so that we are more accepting and inclusive and doing little tiny things in our classrooms in order to meet the needs of everybody, even those kids who aren't able to go to therapy.
Absolutely. Again, it takes a village, right? It takes a team. That's why we are all together in this. And, we are all striving to connect all of those pieces for our kids.
Okay. So in closing, where can people find you? How can that you do a beautiful core course? Is it only for professionals or can anybody take it?
Thank you for asking. I am on social media as HeartSpace PT on Instagram and Facebook, so people can find me there. I have a website, which is www.heartspacept.com. And yes, I have several online on-demand courses, and we offer Dynamic Core for Kids live periodically. I teach that course with a wonderfully talented colleague, Julie Wiebe, PT. But we are also in the spring offering Dynamic Core for Kids Goes to School. So it is a one-day course for parents and teachers and interested individuals, and we are filming that. So we are hoping that it will be available in the fall of 2023.
Oh, I will really look forward to taking that because everything I've learned through you, it's been through us sharing articles or us having I don't even know that we've ever even spoken this long,
I know that we have, and we've certainly never met in person, but I'm like you, I consider us friends and colleagues. So it's wonderful to be able to meet such a wonderful community worldwide.
All right. Well, thank you, Shelley, for joining us. Everybody can find you on social media, and I'm really grateful for you contributing to our course. Our teachers and clinicians are so motivated. They're from all around the world, and you offer us a very refreshing, scientifically based perspective that's rooted in years and years of clinical experience. So thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Have a lovely day, Shelley.
You as well.
Bye.
Bye.